Hello, 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 New Haven, and welcome back to another episode of Arts Respond on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. I'm your host, Lucy Gellman, and I am so excited to be here today talking to a couple of the cast members, as well as the writer, director, producer, Renaissance woman behind Call Forth a Woman, an encore production of which will be at the Schubert Theater on April 26th. I know we're still in February, at the tail end of February, and maybe April feels far away to you, but it's going to be here like tomorrow. So welcome to Tammy Nicole, Dina McGee, and writer, director, producer, legislator, actor, proud New Haven Public Schools grad. I love to shout that out, Trenée McGee. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining me on this beautiful Friday.
Thank you so much for having us. We're super excited to be here.
I'm super excited you're here. And I know like the sun's out, it's warm outside finally. So I know there are other places that you could be right now. But I want to jump right in. Trenée, I'm wondering if you can kick us off and tell us about what Call Forth a Woman is. First of all, let's just hop in right there.
Yeah, so Call Forth a Woman takes us on a journey of the powerfully dynamic women in the Bible who are often forgotten and notably heroic. And I just want to say thank you, Lucy, for having us on. And yes, I am a proud graduate of Co-op High School, class of 2012. That place helped jumpstart a lot of my artistic career. And so it takes you on a journey of the powerfully dynamic women in the Bible. And a lot of these women, their stories have been untold for centuries. And so this kind of exposes you to women that you did not know existed, who were educated, who were empowered, who were equipped, who were in medicine, who was in business. Lydia was a businesswoman. Huldah was a professor. So it sort of exposes you to women you didn't know, while also like harrowing Deborah and Esther and Ruth and Naomi, the women that we are very familiar with.
Yeah, and I actually want to dig in a little bit deeper to that and talk about some of these women because there are so many. And like you said, there are going to be names that probably folks who have like some working fluency and some relationship with their faith have heard. But there are a lot of names that they don't hear. And then at one point, there's almost like a roll call of women in the Bible. And what I was so moved by and impressed with was there were so many names that I think we just skip over. And often our faith leaders can just skip over too. So let's talk about some of the women who are like, I don't know, biblical OGs.
I love that.
But also folks who maybe our listeners haven't heard of before, but also play a really significant role.
Yes, can you hear me? Okay. So just really quickly, and then I'll turn over to the other two ladies. But I think that experience was like that for me. Like when I was researching when I was researching the women to write about, Huldah was one of the women that a lot of people just didn't know about, and that included faith leaders. And I remember being concerned about knowledge around so many powerful women in the Bible, and she was especially one because, unlike others, not that they weren't empowered and powerful, because they very much so was. Deborah came before Huldah, and she was a judge. However, Huldah was a professor, and I think one of the things we often hear is that women were not educated in the Bible, but they very much so were well educated, and we don't know exactly where she was educated, but we know that she was really big into the oratory of traditions, and that was simply because she, I think, believed at one point that people would no longer be able to maybe carry around all the things that educated them. So it's good to remember it and recite it. And a lot of these like biblical OGs, women, they were, and this was in Old Testament. So they were women who, to me, felt liberated and empowered, and they did not feel like they were subjugated by societal pressure. And I think it really just awakens and empowers women in faith communities who sometimes feel like they are subjugated. So I just want to turn it over to Tammy and Dina and just hear from you guys on sort of like briefly on your thoughts about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I play Naomi, and Naomi represents so many of us in that she experienced significant loss and hardship. She's an example of bad things do happen to good people. But with the strength of her faith, with the strength of her wisdom, with the strength of her love and her patience, she was able to recover after losing her son, her two sons, and husband, and was able to help her daughter in law to secure her future. And so she took her pain and she turned it into purpose. She really did. And she was able to help and give wisdom to the next generation, which was her, her daughter-in-law, and helped her. She literally gave her the instruction that she needed to approach her Boaz. Which helped her to secure her future. And not only did it secure Ruth's future, but it also secured Naomi's future. So she just represents such a powerful person of resilience, like the ability to plow through some really tough times and come out on top. Like her life goes from bitter to sweet. It goes from, you know, heaviness to laughter and joy.
So for me, as far as some of these women who you don't usually hear about, I've been in church all my life. And when I became a part of this play, I learned a lot. I learned about women who, the a lot of preachers don't usually talk about. And I learned more about some that they may talk about, slightly. So, and me playing Rahab was a risk taker. She she was able to expose her humanity in a way that a lot of people really don't know about. They don't know that part of Rahab. A lot of people, they hear about Rahab prior to making that decision to join, the Lord's side. And to me, that was very important and a very special character that I'm proud to be playing.
And I want to dive further into that, but Trenée, I want to bring it back to you and ask about the genesis of this project because I know I was lucky enough to see a rehearsal earlier this week on Tuesday night, and I know that this is something that has been like cooking in you for a couple years. I mean, like maybe for your whole life because I feel like your faith has been important to you. We were talking about this like since you were in diapers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I felt like I was being like sort of, we all have a purpose and a call wherever it is. And I felt like I was being called into politics. And at the same time, I had heard the scripture that women must be silent in the church. Someone had used that scripture to me. And I just know two things. One, that I wouldn't be called into a space of power and authority if God didn't believe that women shouldn't be there. And secondly, that this scripture was used entirely wrong and that it actually really lacked context. And so in that moment, I went home and started researching the fierce, powerful women in the Bible. And I actually went back to this person and refuted them on how they misused the scripture and how actually these women were very vocal, not only within the temple, but even outside in cultural spaces. And that, like, God isn't intimidated by the gift and power of women. And matter of fact, like, if you were dying and you needed a doctor and the life-saving doctor was a woman, you wouldn't care because you need what she has. And so I just remember being like, okay, I have to research this. And the research was really for me to edify myself as a woman who's called into different spaces with power and authority. And then also to share it with the world and especially the faith community, because I think depending on denominations, there are more denominations that are way more, women are bishops and women are apostles. And then you have others where they sort of don't believe that you can be a woman in those spaces. And so I was like, yeah, we have to debunk these things and just speak the truth about who these women were. And so as I started to write a little bit of concepts around it, I was like, okay, this has to be released to the world. And so that was the start. Pain, there's oftentimes purpose that comes through from pain, and I was in a really painful space in that time in my life. And doing the research on these women really helped me to overcome that. And then I was like, okay, I have to take this and share it with the world so that women can also overcome in their individual spaces as well. And then, yeah, I've been empowered by women in ministry and women who are brilliant in their own spheres my whole life. My grandmother, my mother, my aunts, women in my community. And so it wasn't an abnormal experience for me to be empowered by women who led. I actually don't know a life where women don't lead. And I'm grateful for that. And so I knew that I had to just share that with the world. And so that was the start of it.
And I understand that you, like, some of this came out during a writing retreat. And then you set a deadline for yourself, which I think will resonate with a lot of artists who are like, I got to get this done. So
yeah.
So you sort of did this crazy act of reverse engineering where you cast the show.
Yeah.
And I think that's really brave. I'm working on something right now where like someone needs to light a fire under my butt. And so, but you did that. You knew that the cast would light a fire under your butt, right?
Yeah. You know what inspired me? Ava DuVernay, somebody asked her, like, how did you finish the script? What was your inspiration? She was like, deadlines. Like, she was like, I'm sorry that this is not like this fancy. It's just deadlines. Just like I think I believe it was Denzel Washington. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry to the Denzel Washington fans, but I believe it was Denzel Washington who says, like, yeah, like actors typically don't necessarily like reading plays. They just want to do it. They want to actively be it. But they have to repetitively to understand it. And so I went to St. Joe's Home for Artisans, which was like one of my friends, Claire McCallus. Shout out to Claire, who is just so remarkable. She's like a traveling gypsy hippie artist. She would love that definition. And she takes the world by storm. One day she's in Rome, one day she's in Mexico, one day she's in Texas. And she was the program supervisor for a home that was like a big giant convent. On the first floor, it housed like men who did homeless work, and then on the fifth floor, I believe it was like home for artisans. And I went there for a couple weeks, and in August, I wrote Shifra Pua, which is the birthing scene, the first scene. And it was so powerful. And then I came home, and that was in August, and I was like, I could not write the rest. And so I started casting. The first casting call was October 30th, 2023. And it was such a brave thing, but artists, we resist and we're really courageous. And so I think seeing the face of everyone cast and knowing that I had to really do a job now by them, it lit like crazy fire under me. So I think I wrote the rest of it in like 2 weeks. Between our production meeting and like right before Christmas, and everyone got the scripts between that time. And I was like I met Tammy at Target to give her script, and I met people in different places. And then by January, we were like in the text and rehearsing, and we were rewriting and editing because it's fully copywritten now and trademarked. But it was a journey. It was a very challenging, but like you said, yet courageous journey, which we artists really truly are.
I also wonder if you can just talk for a minute for folks who maybe don't know about Shifra Pua. So again, in the spirit that April is going to be here before we know it, I come from the background of Judaism, and ritual is really important to me. And I would say so Passover, the story of the Exodus, is coming up in April. And Shifra and Pua, at least in the Old Testament, are these like totally rad Egyptian midwives who are like, Pharaoh, we're not down with killing all of the Israelites' baby boys. We're not going to do that, which is really brave. Like that is an act for which they knew that they could be persecuted and sort of under Pharaoh's thumb. And then of course there's also Moses' mother, Yocheved, who's like also amazing, and his older sister Miriam, who says, I'm gonna watch this baby from the reeds, and I'm gonna make sure he grows up safely. And then there's Pharaoh's daughter, who's like,
oh my gosh,
I'm gonna raise this baby. And it, to me, there is this story that often in what's called the Haggadah, so it's the story of the Exodus, that sort of you sit around a table with your family during Passover and you tell the story, and each person usually gets a different part of the story. Very rarely are these women lifted up for the fact that, like, without them, Moses would have perished, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
let's start, or let's talk about that as a starting place.
You have this like amazing mosaic and kind of like tree. Tree represents heredity of women in Moses's life. And if it weren't for, number one, his mother, so actually the story goes back, the Midrash sort of talks about this in a lot of scholars, but the story actually goes back to Miriam. Young Miriam at 9 years old was the one who begged her father, because couples were sort of separating because they didn't want to conceive, because they didn't want to cause problems, because they knew what was happening. And Moses was like, no to Miriam was like, no to her father, you can't leave. And because of that, she sort of prophesied at 9 years old, Moses' birth. She knew he was coming. So it sort of starts with his big sister, and then his brave mother, who was like, I'm going to give birth to this baby. And, whether she knew who he was going to be or not, a lot of times we attribute people's life to their value, but like, even if they do nothing in society, they're people. Even if they're like, I don't want to give myself as a martyr or be a teacher they're still people. And so we sort of know who Moses is today, but Moses' mother was more so like, this is my son. And so she bravely gives birth, and then Shifra and Puah and the midwives who worked with them produced 603,550 boys through the working of their hands, and Moses was one of them. So really, they were the deliverers before they delivered the deliverer. And while Moses, this powerful man who God used mightily, and also I love to mention that he had a severe stutter, so he wasn't really bound by his challenges. He came through the working of Shifra and Puah and all of these really bold and courageous midwives. And then Pharaoh's daughter, what I love about Pharaoh's daughter is, as I was doing research, she was the eldest of Pharaoh's children, in which usually the eldest would become, I learned this from a really super cool and hip female rabbi teacher at the Hebrew school in Massachusetts, that she was the oldest of all his children, and really she would be the Pharaoh, but the Pharaohs were only men. And so she was the one that drew Moses out of the water, and by which Miriam sort of secretly guided the basket. And I watched a clip that broke down how even some of the most well-researched scholars say the basket got caught. Miriam pushed it as a kid, pushed the basket. It went down the stream. Pharaoh's daughter was weeping because Pharaoh's daughter could not bear children, found Moses, named him Moses, which means from water I drew you, and raised him as her own. So you have this super fierce, this sort of fierce connection between Moses' young sister to his mother, to these midwives, to his adopted mother, who then takes Moses and brings him back to his birth mother to breastfeed him. So this story is just so extremely powerful. And then as they were sort of hiding, as the death angel was coming through, because they were sort of experiencing famine and all of these different plagues, Pharaoh's daughter also hid with Moses' family. So you have this like really stark and fascinating connection. There's a documentary for everyone called Moses on Netflix, and it gives the most in-depth breakdown of Moses' birth all the way up to his adult life, and it is accurate and it is so powerful. And so what I love so much about even in this whole story is that these women radically transform society and culture just by being women. Oftentimes we feel like we have to be this super conglomerate of a thing. And yes, that is, if that's what you're striving for, yes. But the reality is we are just women, and what makes us who we are makes us that huge, powerful thing, And so they were just being who they were. They didn't probably know they would be written about. I really don't know if Shifra and Puah knew that. And what's powerful is at the end of their story, the Bible says that their houses were blessed by the Lord. In the context of that scripture says that they had children. And most midwives were barren. And so we don't really know if that was exactly their story, but most midwives, they were barren. And the greatest contribution of that to society was to bear children. But what if you do if you can't? And so they would help to produce, to help bear the children, because that was their greatest contribution. When in turn, all of these barren women gave some of the greatest contribution to society as midwives. So it is just such a powerful, powerful story, and one that is remarkably inspiring.
So you jump off from there,
Yeah.
and you're discovering these women, some of whom, knowing you, have probably been with you, like, talking to you on your shoulders a little bit, for like your whole life or for decades. And some of whom you're sort of delving into and saying, like, wow, I didn't know that this person, like, was a figure from whom I could learn.
Yeah.
And I also want to open it up to everyone on this call and say, what have you learned and internalized from the women that you are portraying, depicting?
Ladies, did you hear that question?
Okay. Dean, do you want to go?
Oh, sure. Naomi. Her resilience is what resounds in my heart. I could see myself in Naomi. I've gone through some things. I think that we all have experienced some highs and lows in life. And but her resilience is what grips my heart and what encourages me, that she didn't just sit in her bitterness, but she helps the next generation to secure their future. And that's what I'm taking from Naomi, that even though you have experienced bitterness, figure out how to take that lemon and turn it into lemonade. And another thing that I loved about Naomi is that she had this complicated relationship with God. And I love that, because he was not intimidated by her saying, it was the Lord that afflicted me. Don't even call me Naomi, call me Mara, because the Lord Almighty has made my life bitter. I went away full, but now I'm empty. And because the Lord has afflicted me. She had this relationship with the Lord, that she was able to express these things. And I think that, as being a woman of faith, I'm like, okay, I can be mad at God. I can be angry. I can express some of these things. But yet he doesn't turn from her. Yet he's not intimidated by it. In fact, he blesses her.
Tammy, hop in.
Okay, so I learned quite a bit about Rahab, and just the fact that she took a huge risk, not a small risk. She took a huge risk by hiding the Israelites, and she not only put herself in danger, but her family as well. But it was important to her. It was that important to her to to go with her heart and decide to follow God. And I think I've learned about risk taking, because I wasn't much of a risk taker. And I actually took a risk by just being a part of this production after not, being on stage or in front of a camera for over 15 years. So to me, that was a risk, but it was, kind of embodying Rahab's character. And, I would definitely have to say that what I've learned far outweighs, and what I've gotten far outweighs what I am putting in, what I have put in, the first production. It far outweighs what, I could ever have given to the production. So I would definitely say that I've learned a lot, and, still learning really at every, I would say almost every rehearsal. It's like I hear something different from the other cast. And it's like a learning, it's almost like, going to school without going to school, and I would say it has been a great experience.
Yeah, I often tell people the arts are the most formative education I've had in my life.
Mhm.
I like school. I'm not knocking school. I think school's great. Education is wonderful. Please stay in school if you're in school, especially especially those youth out there. It's important. But yeah, I think that's absolutely true, Tammy. I am wondering if we can also talk about what it means to be, on the stage of the Schubert Trenée. I know that the Schubert is a very special place for you, especially, and not just because it's a big theater in the middle of New Haven.
Yeah. Yeah, my first internship was at the Schubert. I was 16 years old. Excuse me. I still have some of the posters. I have giant wall posters of Stomp, Cats, a chorus line. I have my Stomp trash can. So it really exposed me so much. Kelly Wizardo, who's still there, was just so important to us as kids in high school because she had such a dynamic way of like connecting with us and also like helping us to understand the space of theater around us, as well as Anthony. So to go back today, in many different ways. Last year I was the commencement speaker at Co-op, and it was at the Schubert a couple weeks after the show. So I really, really love the Schubert Theater. I recommend it to everyone, and it is birthplace of hundreds of Broadway and off Broadway musicals and shows, and so it really was and still is the launching pad for so many. And I see it really truly as home. So to be on that stage in that space, when I was 15, myself and my siblings, we performed in a cabaret at the Schubert, which was a fundraising event. And so I've had so many different experiences there, and I felt like there was no way to really launch it in the way that I wanted to. Call Forth the Woman, I had to launch it at the Schubert. That's where it had to happen. So yeah, it was just a tremendous experience, and we can't wait to be back.
Hop in.
Performing at the Schubert Theater was absolutely amazing. The rich history of what the Schubert represents, and being able to be a part of that history, and acting for the first time on a stage as such, it was life changing. It was amazing. It was I was a little nervous, but at the same time hyped. So I had all of these mixed feelings, but it was an amazing experience, and I'm looking forward to it in April.
For me, I had performed prior and on smaller stages. So just the size of the theater was, I mean, it was just, breathtaking. And when we went to the theater for rehearsal the first time, and to see the pictures of the legends that had performed there, that I didn't know that. I really didn't know the history of the theater. That really, kind of put something inside of me, some more fire. And I just became really appreciative of the opportunity. Just in when you go down the stairs and you see, pictures of people who have just become legends. And I was like, wow, for me, it was overwhelming, but it also felt comfortable. Like, yes, like, wow, I kind of belong here. So, and then the night of the show, just seeing all those people and the feedback and the energy was just, it was really, on 10. It was just amazing. It was just, I mean, I couldn't imagine this being debuted anywhere else. It was just I can't, it took me days. It literally took me days to come down. It was a high. I couldn't even post about it until several days later because I was just, kind of walking on air, just in cloud nine. Just thinking about it just, kind of gives me the goosebumps.
I love that. Remind people that if you're just joining us or if you've been with us, we're on WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. This is Arts Respond. I'm your host, Lucy Gellman, and I am here with Dina. Am I saying that correctly? Genia McGee, Tammy Nicole, and Trenée
Yes.
McGee. I also want to keep saying Mama McGee just because you are Trenée's mom too. And I think it's really powerful and beautiful that there is a mother-daughter team, and you have siblings in the show, sort of at the heart of this show. I don't know if my mom could I don't know if like we could coexist happily and act in a show without killing each other. I love my mama. Very, very much. Mom, if you're listening, I love you so much. But that is a testament to, I think, both your faith and your relationship with each other, and trust. This takes trust and respect. So, Trenée, I actually wanted to ask you, although I would love to hear from everyone. One of the things that you have really asked actors to focus on is the role of listening. And I think we are in this moment where we are not always hearing each other, as a country, in our homes, like all of the above. So tell me about that and the space that you've cultivated for active listening among the cast.
Yeah, that is so very important. I think as people, we sort of, naturally we sort of naturally prepare what to say, and it's because of our experiences or traumatic experiences or our defense mechanisms. But when you actually listen to what it is these characters are saying, I feel like we're doing their legacy and their history justice, because it sort of makes way for the space for like a healthy coexisting, to me, of my effective listening and then my reasoning responding. And so that's really important for me. And we've done a lot of activities to engage in effective listening. And most of those activities are not even with the script. I remember we did an activity where the only thing we could say was yes. And you had to find a way to communicate with each other with inflections and tempo and rhythm and beats and sounds. And that was a really powerful activity because all you could say was yes. So you found a way to communicate and effectively listening while also understanding the emotion that your scene partner was feeling. And with these characters, because so much of it also is highly informative, for me, it's important that we know what each other is saying, because ultimately we want the audience to understand. In the daughter scene, they provide a lot of statistics and a lot of numbers and a lot of data from the census that was taken of all the 12 tribes. And specifically for the daughters, there were no laws on the books that had determined or ever even thought about a man only dying leaving daughters. So they claim not only their land, but a double portion. And so much of that scene is about effectively listening, because it's so dialogue dense. And with the activities that we've done, eye contact and inflection and tempo, it really sort of helps us to listen, not only as characters, but even in life. A lot of people, I believe, really want to be heard and amplified, and especially in this time. To me, I see more of that than I actually do divisiveness. I think away from everything that's so mainstream and that feels popular, we all want to be heard. We all, desire very similar things. And it's been a really great experience sort of delving into how we can all sympathize and empathize with each other just off of the basis of listening. And so that's really an important environment and space for me.
Both Genia and Tammy, I would love to hear from both of you how it has felt as cast members to be in this process and really focus on active listening, which of course you take from rehearsal into your life.
Absolutely. So as a social worker by profession, that is one of the things that is drilled into us, from social work 101, is being able to active listen. So the actual concept of itself is not new to me. It's what I really raised my children to do, or try to. I mean, we work hard at trying to make sure that we're actively listening and really sitting in the moment, not thinking of how you're going to respond, not thinking of how you're going to come back at that person, but really listening, really sitting in that moment, taking in what the person is saying, taking in their feelings, taking in their perspective, and just sitting there. And so the art of active listening, of course, is something that we continue to work on. Even me as an individual, my family, ever since my children till this day, because they'll all be talking, and I'll be like, okay, I have to step in to be the referee. Okay, we need to active listen, and we actually use the term. We need to active listen. Okay, I already active listening. So I'm not, it's great to see this though in theater. It's great to see this concept just transitioning into other spaces that is different than my professional space in terms of a social worker. But it's great to go into our practices and see this concept of active listening taking place in a creative space. So I love it.
For me, my background is communications, and when people know or when they think about having a degree in communication, they're thinking about talking and speaking. But a big piece of communication is listening. Listening equals focus. If you're not listening, it's hard to focus. And that's how I raise my boys, listen. And sometimes when I feel that they weren't listening, they're 18 and 22 now, but when they were younger, I would stop them. I would say something, or someone would be saying something to them, and I would say, okay, stop. And I would say, repeat what I just said, or repeat what dad just said, or repeat what grandma said, because I wanted them to be good listeners. Because, this world and just different environments, when people don't listen, it just creates, havoc, like literal havoc, when you don't listen. So this space of listening and actively listening to me has been, it hasn't been difficult for me, but it's comfortable because it's what I'm used to. And I think it's good just for overall, just having Trenée really, really be, what do I want to say, to really just press that point, active listening. It just makes it for a really better community. And it's just been a great experience. And, I'm used to it and I like it, and it's good.
I love that. Yeah. And Dina, I love what you also said about making space for it in sort of the creative and specifically dramatic sphere, because actors often have big personalities, right? Trenée, we know this is true.
Oh yeah. Undeniably.
I'm often at co-op reporting, and those I was going to say those kids, those young adults are some of my favorite human beings in New Haven. But they've got big personalities. And so I think it's especially listening to each other and you said something on Tuesday, not listening to respond. And I love that. I carry that with me. I also want to ask all three of you how this show and how your own faith practices intersect with the feminism that you practice, with believing and amplifying other women. Trenée, I'll begin with you because I know that you are, as of, I want to say January, vice chair of the Black Maternal and Infant Health Caucus.
Yes.
The chair of that is Representative Kai Belton, who is from Middletown. And I know that you have some really exciting legislative ideas in mind. We also know that we're at a moment in this country when Black mothers are dying at a rate far, far higher than their white counterparts.
Yes.
And so talk me through how you bring together your faith, your own set of beliefs, this work, which is amplifying women and teaching folks about women. And then of course, like the work that you're actually doing in the state legislature.
Yeah. Thanks for asking me that. I heard a few Black women refer to themselves as womanist. And I really love that concept because I think it gives us the opportunity to sort of shape what it really means to be a woman who is passionate and fierce and led. I think a lot of movements sometimes forget about the intersectionality between being a woman, between being a feminist and being a woman of color.
And so I love that like women of color are really kind of redefining that. But yeah, for me, I think the inspiration that I get from women in a society where it was so male dominated, and oftentimes, like to this day, we don't talk about women because we haven't done our due diligence even within society according to women. It has inspired me to really be that megaphone for other women. And as it relates to the Black Maternal and Infant Health Caucus, this year I was appointed deputy majority leader, which is really truly an honor. I'm on the leadership team, and I'm also vice chair of the Black Caucus. And so, um, what I love about this is, in this case, I'm not a mom yet, right? However, a million millennial women become moms every single year. And I feel like my colleagues say all the time, you're like the face of you're the face of why we're doing this. Because we want to make sure that when you go into this experience, you will not have a traumatic birthing outcome. And I also think like our faith and our fight really positions us even as moms, whether we're delivering babies or we're trying to help them study for a test or we're just trying to be. My mom had 4 kids and all of us came pretty quickly, and she doesn't have like a traumatic birthing story. And we talk about that often. And I think a lot of what guided my mom, she's a rare case, is that of her faith. And so for me, I think as I sort of look at where women are today and where women really truly want to be, I think if obviously in this case, women give birth, right? But like if men were at the center of birth or menopause, we would probably be talking about it way more, right? And so, to be in a space where I'm advocating for a better birth outcome for women, specifically Black women, is so phenomenal. So we are working on hospital reports so that we can really address racial disparities. We want to expand birthing centers. And I also love that we are equipping partners and husbands and families with the medical language to advocate for their mothers and their women, and especially in situations in cases where maybe ESL or a dad's going in and he's like something doesn't seem right, but is not being believed because he's not the one giving birth, even though oftentimes women in that space of weakness can't advocate for themselves. And so it is really powerful work that we're doing. And as I think of Shifra and Pua, and as I think of Deborah, and as I think of all these different women, they advocated for what was right. They advocated for the needs of people. They said Deborah settled disputes. They said every dispute in Israel was settled. She literally handled disputes under a tree, the palm of a tree. So, when I think about these women, they were actively advocating all of the time. And I really feel like that's my call and that's my work and that's my duty to actively advocate for children, for families, for the holistic well-being of people, for mothers all of the time, and if women could have done it in ancient times, have done it successfully, then greater work shall we do, so it's really, really, really inspiring. And has just been remarkable.
I think for myself, I am carrying on a legacy from my own mom. First, I do want to say is that I've always seen myself in the Bible. And I started in high school and college, around high school and college, I started studying all of the women in the Bible. And they have encouraged me, along with having a strong woman, a strong mother in the home, that really, really, helped birth in me community work, advocacy work. Ever since I was young, I always wanted to be a social worker. I always said I wanted to help people. And so we did clothing drives. We did feeding programs. And I mean, this is just something that was done within my household as a child growing up, in my parents' household. So this is the legacy that I passed down to my own children. And then I've always done women's ministry. I have a ministry called Woman to Woman Power Talk, where we empower women holistically. So, women in finance, women in faith, women in business. And then we have Mentor Impart, which is mentoring women in business, and mentoring entrepreneurship, mentoring women in parenting. I founded a nonprofit organization, Iron Sharpens Iron, mentoring the Pearl Society, which is the young ladies component really empowering ladies, dressing for success, to interview for a job, how to realize your goals, your visions, your dreams, how to identify your skill sets and the things that you enjoy doing and the things that you want to do and how you can give back to the community. So that has always been a part of who I am. I just feel like it's in my blood. I just feel like I can't get away from it. Serving and empowering women.
For me, I was raised by well, what I like to call an old school nurse. My mother is a registered nurse from the 70s. So I grew up with uh, someone who taught us about advocating for yourself, usually in the medical, the medical arena. I actually didn't have the best experience with my first son 22 years ago. I had a male doctor, tell me during an emergency C-section that I was asking too many questions. But because of my mother and like I said, I was raised by a registered nurse and I was surrounded by strong nurses, growing up. So I knew that, that wasn't correct. So I believe that everybody, for instance, everybody coming to the show weren't as blessed as, myself or Pasadena to have had, or even Trenée to have had, a foundation of strong women. And I believe that they will leave that theater equipped and knowing that, okay, I can too advocate for myself, for my family, for my children. So there's so many levels, to the show. There's so many reasons to see the show. I'm just going to put that out there. That leaving a theater feeling empowered enough to advocate when you may not have been doing that prior. I believe that that is one of the outcomes of the play in May and will be again in April.
Yeah. And before we go out, so we're winding down, and before we go on, I just want to say I'm so sorry that that happened to you. And I feel like I hear this too often, way too often, even one woman would be too often. But from moms, and especially from Black mothers, and also Latina moms, Indigenous moms, that they were like totally gaslit while they were in this extremely vulnerable place. And so I'm just really sorry that happened to you. And I don't know. I hope that doctor has the day he deserves. So I do want to ask just before we end, both of you, hopefully Dina will pop back in. I think we may have lost her.
She had to go.
Oh, okay. Thank you. But for both of you, you spend a lot of time pouring into other people. How do you take care of yourselves?
That's a great question, Lucy. Like, that's a girl's girl question. So the arts is medicinal, which is why I really work hard in the legislature to fund the arts. I introduced and we passed, became the seventh state to pass the theater tax credit, which if you are doing a pre or post Broadway, specifically Broadway show, you get 30% of a tax incentive back for producers, and that's doing very well. So I spend a lot of time like in the arts. I spend a lot of time like there's like I love the scripture that says peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness, and I love that because it encourages you to be a peaceful person. So I spend a lot of time meditating on that. And I love the gym. Like I love going to work out and like kind of edifying and building my body. I love the movies, just doing everyday things. And I've started to begin to journal and write. I'm working better on those things. And I have to be honest, like if I can be honest, like I have to do of taking care of myself.
Oh no, I think you're frozen. Oh no. Oh, you unfroze. You froze for a
Did I
moment here.
where did I freeze at?
You said, I think taking care of myself, and
So
then you froze.
those are the area. So taking care of myself, but you heard like the movies and the okay, and like doing theater and the arts is medicinal. So the last part I was saying is sometimes taking care of myself is difficult, and I haven't really mastered the way of taking care of myself. So it's something that I'm still working on.
It's a work in progress. Tammy, take us home.
I would say that I've learned how to take care of myself, not on the level that I should, but a lot when my youngest son went to school um, in August. So, empty nester, where I just, if I don't feel like doing it, I don't. If I don't feel like cooking, I don't. If, I just want to sit down and watch a television show or an old movie, that's what I do. um, I'm going to work more on it on another level. But to me, I mean, that's just been really in this transition, just really not doing something if I don't want to.
I want to thank both of you, I should say all of you, for just joining me for this wonderful hour on WNHHLP
Thank you so much, Lucy.
103.5
Thank you so much.
FM New Haven. If you are curious about Call Forth a Woman, and you should be, I just closed my tab for the Schubert Theater, so I'm winging it. But the encore performance is on April 26th at, I'm trying to pull it up. My guess is at 7
At
p.m.
7 p.m.
At 7 p.m.
at the
Amazing.
Schubert Theater. Get your ticket.
Yes. Get your tickets now. The Schubert is, if you've been to the Schubert, great, you know what it is. If you haven't been to the Schubert, I don't know why you haven't been there yet. But check it out. It's an absolutely just like outstanding and beautiful building. Anthony McDonald, who is the still relatively new artistic director there, he will celebrate 3 years in March. He's doing really exciting things, I think, with the theater. And this is one of them. So you can hop on their website. It's super easy. It's just schubert.com. And it will take you there. And oh my gosh, amazing, amazing. Trenée McGee, playwright, director, producer, woman of many talents, and state representative. Thank you so much for joining me, Tammy Nicole, and Pastor
Thank you.
Denia McGee, who is not with us, but was a wonderful, wonderful guest. Thank you all so much for joining
Thank you,
me to
Lucy.
talk about Call Forth a Woman, and Harry Droz, the man behind the magic, who makes our work at WNHH possible every day. Thank you, Harry. We appreciate you. Have a nice weekend, y'all.
Thank you. Okay, thank
Bye,
you, Lucy. Thank you,
everyone.
Harry.